What's up, guys? So UFC Austin, Tsarukyan vs Dariush takes place this weekend, and I'm going to be going through the entire card, starting with the first prelim, ending with the main event, and giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card. So we're going to start off with the prelim opener of Jamie Lynn Horth versus Veronica Hardy. It's a tough one to predict. I'm leaning towards Jamie Lynn Horth. I'll go with her, honestly. They're both shit. This is probably going to be a terrible fight. Jamie Lynn Horth, I think's undefeated. She's like 6-0. Veronica Hardy came back after a long layoff and beat Juliana Miller, but Juliana Miller's terrible. We saw that. Apparently, winning the Ultimate Fighter means absolutely nothing if you're a female. So, Juliana Miller's terrible. Hardy beat her by getting some takedowns and control time and landing the better shots. So I'm going to go with Jamie Lynn Horth in this one. I think she's going to kind of outpoint Hardy across 15 minutes, but it's probably going to be a pretty dead fight, to be honest. We move on to the next fight on the card, Wellington Turman versus Jared Gooden. I'll go with Wellington Turman in this one. It's a relatively even fight, but Wellington Turman in his last fight against Randy Brown actually looked pretty solid. I liked how he did there. Even though he did lose, I think he actually looked pretty solid. Coming down to a middleweight, I think he's a lot better. I think his striking holds up a little bit more, and I don't think he's going to get physically dominated as much at 170 like we saw he did at 185 when he fought like Andre Petrovsky and that kind of thing. So I think he's going to get this one done. I could see him finishing Jared Gooden, but he doesn't have a super high output or any real thudding power to KO people. So I'm going to go with Wellington Turman by a decision, and I think it's going to be a decent fight. But we move on to the next card. The next fight on the card, it's Rolando Bellato versus Ihor Potieria. So I'm going to go with Rolando Bellato here. Word on the block is pretty solid. Ihor Potieria is terrible though, so that's all you really need to know in this one. I'll be going with Rolando Bellato. Apparently he's really strong in the clinch. I think he can kind of muscle around to Potieria and probably land some big shots and maybe put him out at some point in the fight, or put him on skates and leave him frozen like Elsa. Trust! So I reckon he can get this one done against Ihor Potieria. Unfortunately, Potieria, what you doing in the UFC, bro? You should be fighting in Ukraine, let's be honest. Be on the front lines for your country. Why are you trying to fight it in the light heavyweight division? You've got no future in the sport. So maybe he should have a career change, but I'm going to go with Bellato here to make an impressive debut and make a bit of a statement. We move on to the next fight on the card. It's Steve Garcia versus Melk Costa. I'm going with Costa in this one. I think he could finish Steve Garcia. I really liked how he looked in his last fight. I forget who he fought. I think it was Daniel Pineda, I believe. I want to check that just because I've somewhat I actually like this Costa guy. He's the 101 Dalmatians guy. Polka Dot Man, we call him on this channel, is what I'm going to call him from now on. Let me go. Melk Costa, UFC. I'm just trying to find this. I'm pretty sure he fought... No, Austin Lingo, my bad. And then before that, he lost to Thiago Moises on short notice, but that's nothing to be ashamed of, and he did alright in that fight, but his striking's pretty slick. He's got really good kicks, and I think he can mess up Steve Garcia to the body with kicks, maybe even go up high with some of them, chop up his legs, and I think he's going to eventually, it's not going to be like a KO, but I think he's going to get to the point where Garcia's just really hurting. He's not fully fighting back, and he kind of gets done by a barrage of punches. Maybe gets dropped by a body shot or something like that I could see happening, but I like Melk Costa, man. He fought Moises at lightweight. Now he's down at featherweight. I think he's doing a lot better here. He's still a pretty young guy. He's not super filled out into his frame. So I think being down at featherweight in the lighter weight class where there's not as many absolute brute strength guys to just push you around and grapple you, I think that's a much better move for him. So I'm picking Melk Costa in this one to get a TKO. Next fight on the card, Drakar Klose versus Joe Solecki. I'm going with Drakar Klose. He's taken a fair layoff, is something that exists, a little bit of a layoff, so not sure how good he's going to be coming back, but he's had some pretty solid performances in his career. I just want to look up his record really quickly. Drakar Klose. Because I know Joe Solecki's just always kind of been around that middle bit, never been super, super high level. But Drakar Klose, he fought in 2022, beat Rafa Garcia, beat Brendan Jenkins. Before that, it didn't fight in 2021. He had that fight against Beneil Dariush, which hasn't aged badly at all. And even in that fight, he had Beneil on some wobbly legs at a point. He ended up getting KO'd, but he still was looking solid against Dariush. I think he's a guy that isn't going to get overly affected by the layoff. I do think he's actually a pretty solid fighter. Joe Solecki's just always been kind of mid. He kind of wins and loses, and he's never really made a run at the rankings at all. But I'm going with Drakar Klose to get this one done. Maybe by TKO, but I think decision's more likely. Given the layoff, given that he's probably not going to be 100% at his best coming back, give me Drakar Klose decision. We move on to the next fight on the card. It's Miesha... No, not Miesha Tate. It's Brundage versus Jack Reese. I'm going with Reese in this fight, given that Brundage is terrible and I'm never going to pick him to win a fight ever. He sucks. He's terrible at fighting. He's an awful fighter, and he's not good at fighting. If I haven't made that clear, he isn't a good martial artist and doesn't belong in the UFC. He should have been cut. He took the bitch way out and got a DQ against Jacob Malkoon. He got elbowed in the back of the head. Just don't be a pussy about it. People get punched in the back of the head all the time. But he sucks. And Jack Reese, I don't know, he's kind of mid, but he's coming in and debut, probably solid. I don't know. Fuck. I didn't even research this fight. All I know is Brundage is terrible, and I'm picking anyone with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a pulse to beat him. But we move on to the next fight on the card. Miesha Tate versus Julia Avila. This one's an interesting one to predict. Both ladies here taking quite a long layoff. They've both been out for a hot minute. I'm gonna go with Miesha Tate though. I'm leaning towards her. I don't know a lot about Julia Avila, but she lost to she beat Julia Stolyarenko, but Julia Stolyarenko is mid as fuck. She beat Molly McCann, but Molly McCann's awful at fighting. So Miesha Tate, she hasn't fought a lot, but her losses aren't to bad fighters. She lost to Ketlin Vieira, she lost to, I think, Pani Kianzad or something like that. She lost to Lauren Murphy, who's pretty shit, but it was down a weight class. Now she's back up at bantamweight, probably a bit more stronger. Used the grappling a little bit more, so I'm going to pick her to get this one done by close decision, maybe a split decision. I don't know, Julia Avila just doesn't seem all that good, but she's probably going to win, and this is going to be a shitty underdog pick, but whatever. Next fight on the card, Soriano versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Dustin Stoltzfus is an Abbas Magomedov victim, so I can't pick him to win. Soriano's going to TKO him or KO him in the first round. Anyone that gets made to look like an absolute can by Abbas Magomedov, I just can't be picking you in a fight, so that's tough. Soriano's not bad. He lost to Kopylov, but Kopylov's a G. We love Roman Kopylov around these parts, Pause. But he's a great fighter, so I'm not going to judge Soriano too harshly for that loss. And even in that fight, he was sticking around, and then he just got caught. But it's not like he was getting just beaten the fuck out of from pillar to post. So I'm going with Soriano in this one. I think Stoltzfus is awful. Next fight on the card, it's Clay Guida versus Joaquim Silva. I'm picking Joaquim Silva. He actually looked pretty solid against Arman Tsarukyan. He got held down for a bit, but he rocked Tsarukyan. Clay Guida's old as fuck. That's basically where this pick comes from. I can't trust a guy that is 55 years of age, that could, age-wise, be my great-grandpa. I cannot trust him to win a UFC fight against anyone under the age of 35. So, going with Joaquim Silva, I reckon he's probably going to catch and maybe TKO or sub. Could get a sub on Clay Guida. You never know, but I do see him finishing this fight, and I don't see Clay Guida doing too well here. And then he might end up fighting a Jim Miller on UFC 300 kind of type deal again. Something like that. But whatever. It's these fights were meant to be on the prelims, but then Smith versus Roundtree got pushed back. Or Smith versus Roundtree is ending up on next week's card. Instead, we were gonna have Roundtree versus Mirzakanov on the main card. But still, great card this is. But I'm picking Joaquim Silva. We move on to the next fight on the card. It's Kelvin Gastelum versus Sean Brady. One thing you need to know, and I don't know why you would pick this guy, is only one of these men was TKO'd by Belal Muhammad. There you go, that's my pick. I'm picking Kelvin Gastelum in this fight, the former Mexican. I think he's gonna TKO Brady. I think he's gonna bring way too much pressure. And in that fight with Belal, Brady just shut the bed and basically couldn't handle any punches. He got hit in the face and he just was whoa, what the fuck is this? It wasn't even hard punches. Belal got him with a cross, and Belal hits like my grandma. So Belal is terrible at power punching. if you were going to lose to Bellato, it's going to be through like wrestling or just he out jabs you for the fight. Like, you got TKO'd by Bellato, remember the Plains Muhammad. I can't be picking you to win. Like, that's tough. Gastelum coming down to 170. He might be a bit like iffy there, but if he can make weight comfortably and he can bring all his strength and his power and his size and his like physicality down to 170. He looked good against Chris Curtis in that win. It was a pretty close fight, but he looked solid in a comeback against Chris Curtis too. Before that, like, he'd only fought the top of the middleweight division. So I'm backing Gastelum. Sean Brady, you know, his career hasn't aged all that well. Like, his most recent win is against Jake Matthews, who's kind of been proved to be this just middle of the road, unranked, like hovering around number 30 kind of welterweight guy that just loses to anyone who ends up being in the rankings. So I don't trust Sean Brady to like take down. I don't think he's definitely not outstriking Kelvin, and I don't trust him to take him down and hold him there. So I'm going Gastelum in this fight. I reckon he's going to have a pretty nice performance and get himself a spot in the rankings at 170 with a TKO victory inside 2 rounds of Sean Brady. We move on to the next fight on the card. Rob Font versus Davison Figueiredo. I'm picking Rob Font to TKO Figueiredo, and I think it's going to be a bad night for Figgy. Mostly comes from the fact that Rob Font's boxing and his power is actually really underrated. And he's a guy that, look, he TKO'd Yanez. He got held down by Corey. That was on short notice. He probably wasn't expecting Corey to come in with a wrestling-heavy game plan. I don't see Figgy taking him down and holding him there. I don't see like Figgy's physicality that he was able to use at flyweight to just kind of muscle people around. I don't see that being a thing at bantamweight. Even if he's a bit like stronger than Font's going to have a bigger frame, and I think that's going to work well for him. I think he's going to stick behind his jab, stick behind his cross, and I think he's just going to pepper up Davison Figueiredo. Crack him on the chin a bit, maybe drop him a few times. Figgy got dropped with a jab by Brandon Moreno in their rematch at UFC 263. So his chin isn't granite. Like he's a real power puncher, and he definitely could land on Font. But Font's chin ain't bad. Like, he was getting cooked by Chito Vera, and he was still staying in that fight. He was still holding in there. He was still outstriking so he was still outstriking Vera when he wasn't getting dropped. He just kept getting cracked at the end of the round, because that's basically how Vera wins rounds. He gets like the last minute of each round and just steals them by dropping people. And if he didn't have power, he wouldn't. Like, his skills aren't that good. So Rob Font was outclassing him comfortably and just kept getting cracked. But I don't see Figgy having the variety. He doesn't throw the kicks and stuff. He doesn't throw the knees as much. He's going to kind of be looking for like just overhands and big power shots, and I don't see him landing on Font. I do believe Font's going to have a reach advantage in here. That's something I would assume, but I think Font's going to just crack him up and cook him up behind the straight punches and wobble him and TKO him. I think it's going to be a great performance for Rob Font, and it's going to be one for Figgy where he either retires or says, like, fuck it, let me just fight like another legend at bantamweight, or he goes back down. Like, I think it's going to be one where I don't see Figueiredo making a run at 135. But we move on to the next fight on the card. We've got Jalen Turner versus Bobby Green. I'm picking Jalen Turner here. I do think this is a great matchup for him. Even on short notice, although I don't trust him to make weight, so that's going to be a bit of an iffy thing. Like, Green's probably going to complain about that post-fight, which is warranted. Like, if you're accepting a fight, you should be able to make the weight. But, fuck. I'm taking Jalen Turner. I was going to pick Dan Hooker against Bobby Green for a similar reason, and I do think, although Dan Hooker did beat Jalen Turner, I think fundamentally Jalen Turner is better than Dan Hooker. I think I think the attributes that Hooker though brought into that fight was just more toughness, more grit, bit more power, and just more willingness to brawl. And that's where he actually ended up beating Turner, when he was just able to push through the power. Because Jalen Turner does really well when he's able to keep it on the outside and just be a technical fighter. That's one of the ones where he just beats people. And I think Bobby Green also doesn't do well against people that make him come to him. I don't see Jalen Turner running across the octagon, putting a bunch of forward pressure on Green, like allowing him to counter. But when Green comes forward, with this kind of hands-down style and shit that he does, his weird little hood style, I can see him leaving himself open for a shot. Like, Jared Gordon made Green come to him, and even he was cracking Green around a few with some shots. Even Ferguson landed some good shots on Bobby Green. So the only reason he beat Grant Dawson, good win, but Grant's striking has always been pretty iffy, and his chin now looks pretty sus too. So I think Jalen Turner's going to enjoy a nice reach advantage in this fight, good height, and just overall dimensions and length advantage. Pause. But I think he's going to really make Bobby's life difficult. He could honestly mix in some takedowns himself. I don't see Bobby taking him down, obviously. And yeah, I think he's going to maybe even TKO him. This one's a 3-rounder. If it was a 5-rounder, I would be more confident saying Jalen Turner TKOs him. But it all depends. If he comes in shit and out of shape because he's not able to make the weight properly. But Jalen Turner seems like a guy that's always staying pretty lean all year round because he does fight so far out of that 155 pound division. So, taking Jalen Turner, I think he could TKO, maybe even submit Bobby Green with a guillotine if he panics. But I reckon he cracks him up. Maybe a decision, but I'm going to ultimately go with a TKO victory for Jalen Turner. And then I think he's probably going to end up fighting the loser of Dariush versus Tsarukyan, maybe. But we move on to the main event, and it's Arman Tsarukyan versus Beneil Dariush. A really interesting fight. I'm picking Arman Tsarukyan, but I don't like the odds on him. Beneil's a minus 200 something favourite. So underdog. So plus 200 something underdog. Definitely shouldn't be that wide. I do think he's got a really good shot of winning this. He's only lost to Charles Oliveira recently. That's the only bad performance he had. Maybe Charles Oliveira is just really fucking good. I don't know about that, but maybe it could be a crazy thing to say. The guy that finished Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, and Dustin Poirier back-to-back and dominated Tony Ferguson and subbed Kevin Lee. Maybe that guy's just really good. I don't know. I don't know why people are really just discounting Beneil Dariush so much. Literally the guy in the fight before that beat Gamrot, who's the guy that went close with Tsarukyan. I know different styles. I'm still picking Tsarukyan, but I want to talk about Dariush's kind of very realistic path to victory here. He could very well just school him, stuff the takedowns, and just use that veteran striking on the feet and just be more effective, because Arman's definitely got the more dangerous offense, I would say. He's got more diverse striking, throws in the kicks, is quicker, maybe got a bit more power, but Beneil Dariush just lands the right shots a lot of the time. He just knows when to throw, he knows where to throw, and he makes guys' lives very difficult by doing that kind of thing. So I think he's got a very realistic path to victory. He's got a very realistic path to victory because, realistically, if Arman's game plan coming into this is to wrestle offensively, we saw how that went for Gamrot. He basically just got all of his shit stuffed, and Dariush proved to actually be the much better grappler. So I do think Dariush definitely presents a lot of problems in here, but I ultimately just don't see the finishing potential in a 5-round fight as very high for Dariush. I don't see the finishing potential for Dariush being that high in a 5-rounder, so I think even if he does get some rounds on the cards, I do think Tsarukyan is just going to overall find a way to win more rounds and maybe get a finish too. Yeah, I see Tsarukyan just getting the better of most of the rounds. I think I could definitely see Dariush winning some, a mid-round in there, or it's 2-1 going into the 4th or something like that. Along those lines, maybe Dariush drops him at some point, has a bit of a, moment. Maybe Tsarukyan's, shooting on him and he stuffs a lot of them, and we're oh, Tsarukyan doesn't have, the path to victory here. But then I think Dariush is just going to not be able to keep that up the whole time. It's not like he's got bad cardio, but I think Arman went 5 against Gamrot and he held up that same grappling, striking pace and was still beating Gamrot. And I do think he did beat Gamrot. So I think the diversity in striking is going to majorly favour him. I don't think Dariush has a lot of, real danger to offer him on the feet, where Tsarukyan's, got to be really tentative. Obviously, Dariush can, put you out, definitely. He did it to Drakar, Klose, he's KO'd people before. But I don't know, coming off a loss to Oliveira, I don't think he's going to be carrying that same confidence that he was against Gamrot too. Maybe he comes in here, plays spoiler, Arman Tsarukyan just needs a bit more time before he gets to the top 5, but I'm going Tsarukyan. I think he's going to get a TKO or submission. I doubt a sub, but I think he finishes Dariush. I think he's going to put on a bit of a statement. I'm going 4th rounds TKO for Arman Tsarukyan. I think he just makes Dariush looks like he's decent for the first 3 rounds, and then he kind of eventually really just puts it on him, and Dariush can't deal with the diversity of strikes. But Ladies and gentlemen, those are the picks for UFC Texas. It's a really good card. I'm looking forward to it a lot. I'm going to be streaming live. I'm going to do my first live stream, first fight companion. So guys, tune in this weekend for the card. I'm going to start at the early prelims. So I'm going to be streaming for the entire card. And yeah, tune in. I'll see you in the next one, everybody. Peace out.